Welcome back. We're at day 3 here in the intervention, and today with EVT, we're going to be going over training in the veterinary practice, how it's done, why it's important, and how to get it right. Let's get started.
Thank you everyone for joining us. I said for 30 minutes of training, and when we first attempted this with the group today, it took us well over 30 minutes, but I really appreciate you spending the time with us, whether you're getting the rest of the content from today's live session or joining us for the first time. We're excited to have you and to talk through training and some training tips. How does training look, whether it's that first week in the hospital and you're training your new vet tech, or you're going out to a formal training class. How can we get more out of it? And what does it mean for all of us? So with that, we'll jump into the topics we're going to go over for the day. And that first one is what is training? What makes it different than other aspects of learning and teaching? How is it done? How do we accomplish successful training? And you'll find too that we're going to talk about this in both the trainer and the trainee throughout this presentation. Why do we need to train? Why is it important? And why do we need to be trained? What can go wrong? So it's important for us to always think about those inevitabilities of where we can have issues, what can go wrong, and help to plan ahead of how we're going to deal with those potential pitfalls when they happen. And then on the flip side, how to get it right. So taking some of those moments where we can have problems or where things can go wrong and flipping them on their head and really making sure we have that successful, impactful training. So what happens when it's your turn, when you're the trainer or the trainee? And then we'll walk through some examples on types of trainings, clinical and soft skills. And for a live presentation, we would leave time for Q&C. You won't see that today, but I do appreciate everyone who joined our call. We did have some great conversation at the end of the brief. And for those of you who are joining us on the recorded session, please feel free to reach out. Tag us in a post on Instagram or LinkedIn, or send us a direct message. We love to hear your concerns, your solutions that you've implemented, and how we can make training and continue this conversation with training across the veterinary industry. So let's talk about what is training. By definition, it's the action of teaching a person or an animal a particular skill or type of behavior. And what I want to focus on out of that definition is the skill and behavior. When we're training, we're going into the training with a tangible outcome that we want to achieve, a skill or a behavior that we want our trainees or in terms of our pets to have at the end of this training. It's different from coaching and it's different from teaching, but they're all interrelated, and there are aspects of training when you're coaching. As a coach, you're going to focus more on the process and you're going to focus more on performance enhancements. So taking a skill that's already learned and making it better and better, and bringing the team together and making them better and better. And again, training is part of that, but it's a part of a set of tools that you're going to use as a coach. And similar with teaching, you'll find that teaching is a longer relationship. If you think back to your days in school, you were with a teacher for 9 months straight, and they were teaching you all manner of skills and different sets of information. And so there, again, training is part of that, but it's just one piece in the puzzle as a teacher. And then the last piece is it's not easy. And I don't want to scare you away. There are those moments where you will just click right away with a student and they will light up with knowledge. They'll immediately be able to demonstrate that skill and you will just be flying high for the rest of the day. But oftentimes it takes patience. You're going to be working against negative attitudes, against people who were told to be in your training. And that can be hard. So take it easy on yourself. And when you have a day where you're not making that connection immediately with your students, don't walk away from the training altogether. Take some time, regroup, and start again. And for those of you who remember the movie The Never Ending Story, training is a never ending story of its own. It's ongoing, it's cyclical. I often cite stories of being a parent, but I find as the children learned how to ride bikes, they would get a bunch of new skills, and then we would set it aside and they would regress slightly, and then they would get some more skills and then they would regress slightly. So we're always building up in that circular pattern, and it's dynamic, especially in science and medicine. The landscape is changing constantly. If we think about our ever-present pandemic, that was a virus that wasn't even on our radar a year or two ago, and we've had to completely upend how we treat understand a completely new virus, and learn how to treat that virus. So it is always changing, whether it's human medicine or animal medicine, and it's important that we stay up to date with these new methods of treatment, these new protocols, and these new viruses that come our way.
All right. Thank you so much, Caitlin. And I'm going to take it a little bit deeper and get into how this works, how it's done. And no, there isn't a one size fits all, but there are definitely universal principles that can be applied to any training situation. And these are what Caitlin and I have found throughout our years of experience and through different industries, and what we've crafted together for EVT and in turn for you. So let's start with our trainers. The interest piece there. Do they actually want to be trainers? And is this a requirement of their jobs? If it is, make sure it's in the job description and it's been communicated that it's an expectation when you've reached a certain bench point that you will be expected to train your subsequent teammates. Are their skills relevant to the task at hand? And our most talented team members may not necessarily be the best trainers. So the next question then becomes, how do we utilize their skills and put them to good use for everyone, those people included? Peer evaluations and assessments. Don't get stuck in that thought trap. These are not the same thing, right? You have a self-assessment and an evaluation from your peers or management. And I remember them based on mnemonic devices. Alyssa and assessment have a lot of A's and S's. That may not work for you, but think of something else that would. And then peers and management both have E's, as do evaluations. So that's how I keep them straight in my brain. It's important to know and to see how external and internal visions align or not. And then you can work on them from that point forwards. And then training our trainers. We've got to remember to train these folks, because before this process starts, throughout the program, and afterwards as a wrap up, it's extra important as they're the ones delivering the training for us. So how do we do that? We love to work with VARC. It's a program based out of New Zealand, and it talks about how we learn and how we teach, and then incorporate that information and relay it forwards. And Caitlin already spoke to that training is not teaching and it is not coaching, and it's not. It's really its own entity, but it combines and takes some elements of both of those things. So if we know how we incorporate information and then relay it back to our trainees, it's going to make us a better trainer. DISC is where we take our personality and communication and do this. We can't train someone if we can't effectively communicate. And who we really are comes into sharp focus here. And it's important to be self-aware as well as team aware, which leads us right smack into EI, which is your emotional intelligence. It's the new intelligence quotient. So it's knowing and recognizing our own emotions and how we respond to them, as well as those of our teammates. So it's body language, it's eye position, it's I'm not really paying attention. It's, can you actually tell me you were listening to me through actively being attentive and repeating back what was said? That shows how much you're engaged and present in the situation. And then that final point up there is CE. I have a quote that I refer to so often, and I kind of live it. It's one of my mantras: never stop learning, because life never stops teaching. And that doesn't just apply to the veterinary world, though. That's what we're focusing on here. And clinical skills. This is a life skill, right? So this is also your leadership, your communication, time management. Caitlin's going to talk about that later. We need to refresh it because clearly she and I have a lot to fit into small amounts of time. But I digress. It's really for your trainers. They need to have that continual support and that education to keep them at the level they need to be for themselves, as well as for the team that they're training. So that leads us right into our trainees. Don't throw these guys and gals to the wolves. That experience of standing in the middle of an emergency room or the treatment floor at a front desk getting yelled at by an irate client, it's the worst, right? It's that, oh my God, what do I do? What do I say? Where do I go? It's something we probably all experienced at one point in our lives. And is it a fond memory? Not so much. So this shouldn't be a one and done session of orientation in any parts of these either. So that orientation process, I would really recommend, we would recommend that you consider it to be a minimum 3-day process, ideally a full week. I know that sounds really impossible, especially right now with lack of staff and overwhelmingness of appointments. But it's critical to make that time throughout the training, because this is where your new teammates shouldn't be touching animals or interacting one-on-one with clients. They need to get an introduction to the practice through a really thorough presentation, get all of their HR paperwork done, do their self-assessments, like some math problems if you're a nurse, general veterinary knowledge for any department. If you're going into anesthesia, make sure you have some case relevant questions there. And if you're in general practice, can you walk us through a first puppy or first kitten visit? Get the tour of the practice, all the places, the nooks and crannies that they need to know about, especially the break room, so they can actually get a break. And if they need to get a locker assignment, get introduced to their trainer or trainers, the rest of the team, who they're reporting to, and a welcome packet. If you don't have one, you need to make one. And this is getting into then the integration portion, and that should be done similar to what I love to refer to as a tapering prednisone dose. So those of you that have used this medication in practice know that you start at a higher one and you slowly wean it down until it's at just a minimal or as needed basis. And the same kind of thing goes with training. You need to be on top of your trainees at the beginning, and then as they progress based upon their knowledge level and their skill assessments, evaluations and things, then you can back that off. So this is where those evaluations and assessments come back in. Make them digital, make them consistent, standard, and here's the kicker, required. So if you have just simple as a Google form that they can get back to you, that way you know where they're at and where your team's at, and set the expectations ahead of time and ensure that they're met by follow through, weekly meetings. Definitely at least an email or a quick text. There's so many ways to not be so invasive when we're dealing with lack of time. But then you want to have a more formal one and more in depth at 1 month, 2 months, and 3 months, and avoid the term probation. We've all heard it. Once you've reached your 90-day mark or you've reached your 3 months probation, yeah, they're new to the team, but not necessarily vet med, and they haven't committed a crime at being new at something. We've all had to start somewhere. So just changing the vernacular can sometimes make a huge difference. So they need to get our respect, and they need to get a way to determine their progress, right? So this is not just a form and a checklist to tick all the boxes, although that's important and necessary for documentation and recording. But you really need to physically see, hear, and experience what your new team members are going through. Sit in on an anesthetic case, scrub in the OR, get involved in a CPR code, get dirty. Casual observation is a start, but you've got to see it through. And then make sure that there's a logical and systematic approach for leveling up. Base it upon the training process, the skills, and the individual. But take the labeling out of the equation. Just get rid of it. No more beginners, no more intermediates, and no more advanced people. They are nurses, they are assistants, they are CSRs, and yep, even doctors. And they're all learning, developing, and mastering their skills. Learn their names, remember them, and focus on the process and support the individual. And that's where the environment comes in. This is a training environment. So in an ideal training space, no emergencies, it's quiet, there's great music playing, we're fully staffed, everyone's rested, we've had breaks, everyone's fed, and no one's in a bad mood. Reality check. We're in 2020 version 2.0 in 2021, and that's not a realistic expectation. So we've already set ourselves up to fail if that's what we're focusing on. Instead, you need to be prepared for the unexpected, right? So read the room, talk to your people, plan to be flexible, and ensure that despite the chaos, the top 4 criteria are met. It's an equitable playing field. This is not the same as equal. This is equitable. All right. So you need to go read that up and get that definition, right? It's important to know. It's inclusive, right? Everybody is included in a process. We can't do a CPR code effectively. Hint, CPR is coming. And also make sure that it's supportive of everyone, right? And then the last one there is material. And all of those subpoints are really important, that everything that you're providing in any type of training program, and that's what all of this entails, the trainers, the trainees, and the training environment is your training program. It needs to be comprehensive and it needs to work for everyone that's involved. So what does this look like in a workflow situation, right? My visual people, of which I am one. So this is where we're talking about the trainers that need to be inspirational, right? This is This is where EVT's motto comes into play. This is why we love it so much. We are here to inspire, instruct, and impact, but we have to do it together. So those arrows that are connecting all of these different boxes are super important, because you take that inspiration that you're giving and then you need to impart it to your trainees, right? And you combine it with teaching and coaching skills. We're going to get on those in a little bit. And then the training environment, again, it's got to be inclusive, and it's got to be a safe place that yields a positive impact, right? There can be negative experiences. That's going to happen. But the ultimate result is that you come back and focus on the positive, and for everyone that works within it. And each trainee has to then take all of the information, so the external stimuli, what they're being told, and incorporate that they're learning all of that, and then be willing to invest their time and energy back into the process. And what's really amazing about this, it's cyclical. It's done in tandem, multiple players, right? So if one piece gets stuck or broken or isn't working, there are others to pick up the slack, and in turn, one another, which leads me to the next one of why it's so, so important, right? So for the dynamic portion here, this is really talking about us as individuals, right? We're not static beings. Those of you that know me, and even if you just met me today or you're seeing me again here, I am constantly moving. If not physically, my brain is like, yes, what can I do next? What's going to happen? But this is not just me, and this is not just you, and this is not just for life in our veterinary world. This is life in general, right? And having the tools in hand to enact a standard of care, not for our patients in this instance, but for ourselves. And the technology with which to make it happen makes it more exciting, doesn't it? It really does. And this is, again, how we stay fresh, in touch, and connected with ourselves and each other. So that next point of transference is where we take our dynamic state into the setting that we work within, right? So vet med is a contact sport. Even if you don't like athletics, and trust me, you'll never catch me running unless it's a true emergency or, rabid dog. But we've really got to work close with one another. And taking a page from Katie Ford's Imposter Syndrome book yesterday, we're all more of an expert than we realize. Now, this does not mean that you cross over the line from confidence to arrogance. Not a good plan. But it also doesn't mean that we know it all and we don't bother to learn more. I keep coming back to that. We always need to keep learning, right? So this is where instead we own what we're already good at. Own your awesome. And that moment of, hell yeah, I am the IVC champ, or I am the best cat wrangler in the world, or wizard at CRIs. Own it humbly. And then graciously pay it forward. Share that skill with someone else. And we're all, in fact, we are replaceable. We are. We're not replicable. There's only one of each of us. Thank goodness in my case. One of me is more than enough. We are all unique, and we put our own stamp on where we've been and what we do. So it's equally important to not be a pivot point in the wrong direction. All right, those ripple effects can go both ways, which leads me to the next and probably my favorite picture. And those of you that have known me for a long time know that this is my sport. I love synchronized swimming. Yes, because it's wicked cool. It's wicked hard. It's all the things. But this is also going to allude to those moments in history where we've needed to lift each other up. Think about any international conflicts. Think about what the Red Cross does, Vets Without Borders, Doctors Without Borders, Habitat for Humanity, all of these things. And look at the first of anything. First, women in vet med. That's a big thing happening right now, right? First man on the moon. All of these experiences. Have there been subsequent stories of others? Yeah, there have been, because there was that first pioneer to lift them up to do so. This sport of synchro, I did it for a really long time, and we literally got out of the water by lifting each other up. And it applies to everyone, not just this sport, others, not just our industry of veterinary medicine, but in engineering and program management and in healthcare and in education, everywhere. It's incredibly important in a training setting. No one improves with a positivity sandwich. You did a really great job, but crap in the middle, and close it up with, and then we'll do better next time. It doesn't taste good. The aftertaste is even worse. And nobody's going to do well if they're belittled and unsupported. So we need to live by Robert Ingersoll's quote here. We rise by lifting each other up.
Okay. So now, what do we do when something goes wrong? And again, we're going to talk across all three of the dynamic, the pieces of training: the trainer, the trainee, and the environment. And there's a variety of things that we can find that end up going wrong. Maybe our trainer was thrown into this role. Lissa mentioned that oftentimes your best technical folks are not your best trainers. And maybe they've been told, because they know all of this, that they need to be in this role. And so maybe they feel they're doing it because they have to and not because they want to. And that's important to note. We need to understand people's skills and desires before we put them into roles. Communication, this is so important, and we have a whole other discussion on it. And it's something that is, again, a thread across all of our lives. It's about training in vet med, and it's not about training in vet med. And so, understanding when our communication doesn't land and being able to reword, reassess, pivot how we're looking at things, attitude. And really, this is one we could have put across all three. Alyssa gave you some great body language of how you can see that attitude coming across, but bringing a negative attitude, whether that's coming from the fact that you're a trainer and you don't want to be, or that you had a really rough day at home and fought with your kid or your husband or your dog, or you had a flat tire before you left the house and you just can't shake that can start to color the training and affect other people's attitudes as well. Skills, not just the skill that you're training on, but your skill as a trainer. And Alyssa talked earlier about how important it is to train our trainers and to continue to give them education as well. We never reach perfect, and we're never done learning. And their own personal growth. So related, making sure that they can continue to get the education and training and growth and career opportunities that they want as well. Then there's the trainee. Do they want to be there? Have they been told, again, same thing, voluntold, you're going to this training that they have no interest in and they decided they're learning nothing from? And really, when you walk in with that attitude, you're a self-fulfilling prophecy there. You're going to find that you don't learn anything out of the training. Are they engaged? And I know people engage verbally in different ways, and some people don't like to speak up in large groups, but grab the trainer after class, or step outside of a code with your trainer and ask some private questions, because those questions, your personal experiences, that kind of color commentary that you bring to a training is going to be so impactful for everyone in the room, including the trainer. And that's very much related to the next one, inquiry. Ask questions, ask so many questions. To me, that's a sign that you get what we're talking about. I worry more about when I give a presentation and it's silence at the end. I worry that folks either shut down and didn't listen, or I didn't do a good enough job explaining it so they understand enough to really dig into the meat of it and ask a ton of questions. So me personally, I love questions. The more, the better. And skills, that's why we're here, right? Is to give them new skills. But if we don't have the base skills, if they don't have the base skills walking into that training, then more of the training is going to fly over their head than is going to stick and really make an impact on them. Their mentality. Are they walking into this as yet another training, or I already know this from my previous hospital? And how we approach this is so important. I've spent a lot of time on the other side as a trainee, and sometimes I'm taking trainings on things I feel like I already know or already know part of. And what I've always started to say to myself is, go into this training and come away with at least one new thing, one different way to look at it, or one new skill that you walk out of there with. And when I go in with that, I generally find I walk out with way more than I ever expected. What's their history? What's their experience with training? Our experiences color our stories on everything. And so understanding the person, especially in a one-on-one training, not just their personality, but their life story, can help you to understand how they're going to take to training and how you can tailor that to the individual. The environment. So some of these we can control, and some of them we can control better than others. Heat and cold, that's always going to be a personal preference. But if everyone's complaining about cold, they're going to be more focused on how they feel and finding warm jackets than about the content. Are you keeping people out? Often we resonate with the people who are like us. So if you're an extrovert and like me, you ask a ton of questions, you don't want to be spending all your time focused on the person in the audience that is you as a trainee. So make sure you're pulling from all around the room and engaging people in different ways so they feel part of that training team. Same with clicks. It's easy for those to form person to person. And if you see that, especially in a group training, try rearranging the seating. Yes, it makes people uncomfortable. I often don't like it on the other end, but it changes the dynamic and the feel of the room and can break those cliques apart. The administration of it, the logistics, we had a good example here earlier, and we planned and planned and planned and dry run, but sometimes those logistics are just it's gonna be an eventuality you didn't think of, or that day all of North America's servers are going to be down. So just understanding kind of what could go wrong there and having backup plans, especially on the technology side. I love technology, but it does seem to be one of the things that hinders us the most. And pace. Some people love that really fast pace, and if you've got someone in for the week and they love the emergency department and that pace of I guess hurry up and wait often, but that really frantic trying to get something done, save a life, that can be really invigorating to them and send their endorphins up and allow them to really absorb that information. And you might have other people who are methodical and slow and want to really dig into the details. And so you have to modulate your pace, and you're not always going to be able to hit everyone in a group setting, but that's something, if you're doing an individual training, you can be really cognizant of. Medication. So do you have a cold and you've taken some Sudafed and it's got your heart racing and you're talking like you've had 8 cups of coffee? Or have you taken a decongestant or something that's going to make you a little bit drowsy? Understanding how that either as a trainee or a trainer is going to affect your cognition is important, and make adjustments in how maybe you're standing at the back of the room if it's a group training rather than sitting down, or maybe you're taking notes in a different way. You try to take some actions that you can to help offset these. So let's talk about how to get it right. We've talked about where it can go wrong, and now let's flip it on its head. As the trainer, we've talked about a lot of these things that can go wrong, so it's important to try to identify really what that root cause of the problem is and fix that. If you are fixing a symptom and not the disease, then we're never going to make progress there. You'll see across both trainer and trainee is encourage people with your questions, with your body language, with your words, with individual feedback after the class. But trainers in general, the ones that are there, we're here because we want to make a connection with you, and we want to see that we've had an impact. So sometimes it's as simple as saying thank you to those trainers. And on the other side, trainers, when you get a really good question or you've got a lot of good conversation, encourage that conversation, foster it, and grow it. Train. It seems redundant, and we've said it quite a bit here, but like Alyssa said, life never stops teaching you lessons. And so always be on the lookout for them. Always be looking for that new technique in vet med, a new way to communicate, new studies on emotional intelligence and how you can bring them in to your life and your practice. Incentivize. So it's so important to make this a part of the culture. And when people say they follow a newsletter and they bring into everyone a new method of doing care, make sure that as a leader or a peer, you're really responding to them and implementing that. And again, asking questions. And if you're a leader, you lead by example here and start to bring new training into your group and encourage those people who are training on their own, even outside of your formal training program. And then as a trainer, make that person feel really good about themselves when they learn. And sometimes the incentive is learning the skill, and sometimes the incentive is the praise of an outside individual. So back to identification, understand that person and really what incentivizes them. Support each other. We talked about in the beginning that this isn't easy. It isn't easy as a trainer, and it isn't easy as a trainee. So if everybody can recognize that we're all in this together and offer that support, it's going to make it better for everyone. And inspiration. We talked this morning after about mentor and mentee relationships, and what I most often hear when people as mentors talk about their relationship is that they've taken more out of their mentee than they think they've offered their mentee. And it's that inspiration, whatever position you're in, sharing your insight and your desire and your excitement about what you do is inspiration to many people. And listen, really listen. Don't just sit there and be quiet thinking about what you're going to say in response. Really listen to what they're going to say. Understand it, process it, let it sit in your brain, take notes, but really listen and really hear what's being communicated to you. And again, that goes for both. So, on the environment side, uh, a lot of these themes come back through. Make sure you're looking at your environment regularly. And if it's starting to be cold and the paint is chipping and it just feels unfriendly, maybe a fresh coat of paint brings it in. Maybe adding some paintings to the wall just to brighten it up, and encourage others. This, work is a home away from home. We all spend a lot of time at work, and if you're you training in the practice, incentivize people where it makes sense to bring in and make changes that are gonna just make it feel more comfortable to be there. And communicate. If you have a problem or you identify a problem in the environment, don't just ignore it. Bring it to the person that can change it. And lead by example. So you don't have to wait for somebody to tell you to make these changes. You can do it on your own.
Absolutely. And right now, when it becomes your turn, like many of you, I've been in both a trainee and a trainer position. I think throughout all of our lives, we all have been, or we will be if we haven't yet. And I've experienced both good and bad scenarios for each, but I learned from them, all of them. And these points listed here are some of what I've garnered over the years. And the only one in all caps is definitely the most important: patience with ourselves and each other, our co-trainers, supervisors, managers, doctors, and our trainees. Communication, active listening with feedback is critical. Read the room. Does who you're working with like to watch and then do? Then get comfortable being in the spotlight so you can show them what to do without bragging rights, and get in it and get dirty with them, which is not hard in our line of work. Remember, sometimes it's also the best type of communication to keep our mouths shut, especially when an anal gland abscess is involved. That's a whole other story, maybe some other time. Excuse me. And engagement, not the sparkly kind. This is up here and throughout all that we discuss, because it's so important to be present with your team, to actually recognize and participate in everything that you're doing and in every aspect. So empathy then is another important feature. And this is not sympathy. It's also important to show some towards ourselves, keep our boundaries in place, respect our own and those of others, the rest of our team, clients, etc. Keep in mind, though, toxic positivity is also a thing. So avoid a good vibes only mantra will go a long way to show others that you actually get it. Guidance, this is not handholding. This is directing and leading the conversation and the workflow and the thought process, the needle to where it actually needs to go, constructively and not destructively, and establishing what we expect from a situation ourselves and our team. It is the worst feeling when we're talking or working with someone and they are anywhere but where we need them to be. I'm looking at all of you out there, and some of you I can't see. And so far, I don't think anyone's fallen asleep or booing. That didn't happen today, so that's good. And is what we have up here a list of requirements for always and every time we're in a training and learning role? No, we're not robots. And an off day is bound to happen. So the last point becomes the most important. Be honest. Should probably put that in all caps too. That's right up there with patience for me. Tell someone when you don't know the answer. Ask for help. And when you know you really need it, and communicate, communicate, communicate. We keep saying that. It's slightly important. And as much as we'd all like to be mind readers, we're not. And you can you will save a life when you own what you don't own yet. You will someday. And if something outside of the vet world is impacting or affecting you, details aside, your team needs to know that something's up so that they can be there to support you or back you up when you can't be there. There is no shame in saying, I don't know, I need to look that up. It is a much better reference, honestly, when you're taking an open book exam, because that's really what life is about. I'm going to go grab a Plums or the Merck manual or some other reference manual because I can't keep everything in my head and be an present and impactful nurse. It's just not physically possible. So hopefully you've gotten a sense of a theme here. If your work, and in this case, training environment, isn't those top three things, equitable, inclusive, and supportive, you've got to fix those first. Those are should be your top priority. It's not the physical environment we're focusing on, though that is important. You know, Caitlin was talking about temperature, and if, you know, you're taking medicines and things that will affect how you deliver the training, that is your training environment. That is absolutely part of it. But think in mind too, if you're cold in the sense of that you're distant from everybody, or if you have a different thought about how you approach medicine, and you have a doctor that does it this way, and you have another clinician that does it that way, and a specialist that, it's so much in that environment that can be contradictory, is to find the common thread. It's that personal part of the environment we're focusing on here, being the change. Start the conversation and then get in touch with us if you need help to set this up. And then we can all take the steps to establishing a solid foundation to build upon. So what does this look like in short little pieces and cyclical fashion? Because who doesn't love a good visual representative, right? This is what we're talking about here, right? So in order, there isn't one. All kidding aside, each of these aspects will require focus. But every practice, each team will need to start from a different place. You may already have some of these pieces in place that you're already functioning with, or just need some tweaking here and there. But you absolutely need to establish a thorough, consistent, and standardized training program with the material to back it up. Those are your evaluations, your assessments, leveling protocols, knowledge checks, growth and development standards, so that way everyone gets what they need. Establish a training team and train the trainers to be trainers, doing workshops and monthly meetings, things of that regard. And support your trainees through orientations and training packets, doing tapering doses of one-on-one work with your top trainers, and provide a setting that's both physical and personal with the personnel in the environment that will enable all of this to work together. So getting into some fun stuff, we have actual video clips that we're putting together of both the venipuncture and the IV catheter placement that we'll be posting in the upcoming weeks. But since CPR is always a skill that needs work, I thought we could run through a mini code on a kitten and a bulldog, because those are some of the things that we don't see all the time. So here we go. We have little Kit Kat. This is part of the equipment that we build here at EVT. She is fully functional. I'll open her up for you. It's okay. She's been anesthetized. Well, she's kind of, look at the state of her heart. She's actually pretty well oxygenated. So there's her little heart. Poor little tongue, though, she isn't oxygenating all that well. So we're going to put her back together. And those of you that have had some recover training, you're in luck. That's what I teach with. I am not certified to get you certified. That is in the works. But I can absolutely walk you through a mini training. So basic scenarios with neonates is you want to make sure that you always have contact with them. Their spine is towards you and you're able to control it. Something this small, please don't use your full hand. Please do not push on them with your full weight. It is way too much. I'm going to adjust my camera so you can see a little bit right there on where she's sitting. Pardon, my mouse is in the way there. So you want her back towards you and you're going to support their spine, and you're going to take 2 or 3 fingers, depending on the size of your patient, on the ventral side. Okay, so they should be in right lateral ideally, and then your thumb's going to go right on the dorsal side, dorsolateral. So this is right on their heart. So this is the cardiac pump theory, and it shouldn't go any faster than 120 beats per minute. Those of you that are my music fans, this is Gaga's Just Dance. I'm not going to sing for you today. I'm going to count out loud and in 6s, because this would then cue my ventilator to breathe every 6 seconds, which is 1 breath every 10 breaths per minute, which is the recommended rate. But if you're doing this on your own, you have to breathe in their mouth. Since she's a stuffy, I'm not going to get any snot in my mouth. I'm good with that. So here we go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. You're doing this for 2 minutes. So if you get to 30 seconds, you're doing it by yourself, is when you stop and do a couple of breaths. We're going to pretend I'm at 30 seconds. I come to her. I don't bring her to me. There she goes. Okay. Neonate CPR. Quick version. I'm sorry to say, Kit Kat, you didn't make it, but we love you so much. You're going to be fine. And then coming into our lovely bulldogs. It's a pretty good one, right? She's a pretty solid gal. I mean, that's not an abnormal color for our brachycephalics. I love them. I have a smushy face myself. These guys and gals need to have CPR done on their back. Put them in dorsal recumbency, okay? Can you do it laterally? Yes. Is it better if you do it this way? Absolutely. And I'm going to raise my camera back up a little bit. The biggest thing that you need to remember here is leverage, okay? You need to be at least 2 feet above it. You need to find that xiphoid process, which is down here, okay? And then you're going to go 1 finger width to 2 finger widths cranial, right here on the sternum. Fingers interlocked and up. Same, a little bit slower rate, about 110, and you're going to push with your elbows locked, your shoulders over your hands. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. Now I'm going to stop. That's the technique for compressions. What someone's going to be doing is intubating at the same time. So how are they going to do that? At the head, backwards. So you need to practice that. Can you practice that on an actual patient? Should you? No. Training models and mannequins. That's where we come in. So that's some of the clinical skills that we would love for you to work with. Please get in touch with us if you'd like to do some more. And then the other skills that we need to work on are going to come from the soft skills side, which they're not soft. They can be very challenging, but they're called that because you're not actually poking things and, clinically causing a ruckus. So I'm going to toss this back on over to Caitlin.
Thanks, Liz. I was so engaged watching you do CPR, so thank you. And we'll talk, this is our last piece of the puzzle here, soft skills. I know this is one that we don't all like to talk about. It's squishy, right? And we can't really put our hands on it. It's not like where Alyssa had a training mannequin and I can show you and I can say, put your hand on the xiphoid process and this is how you count and this is how many beats per minute and this is the outcome you're looking for. Soft skills are way more fluid, but they are just as important and something that we need to work on, and we need to be able to identify those triggers that we cause in other people, the changes that our soft skills have in other people, and how we are they what we are expecting and what we're wanting. So these are a handful of soft skills that we train on that we think are very important. And just two I want to highlight today is coaching. We talked about coaching earlier, and we noted that coaching isn't training, but again, it's so important, and training is part of a coaching program. And if you are a leader or a peer leader, coaching your teammates is going to be so important, and it can be an informal sort of thing. And sometimes coaching is as simple as helping people to identify their unique skill sets, or as Alyssa likes to say, helping them own their own awesome. And so be a coach whenever you can and wherever you can. And if you don't find coaches within your practice, try to advocate for that as a role. And the last one is time management. And we're joking about today and how it took us longer than we expected. And even now it's taking us longer than we expected to get through the information we have. And it's, we're so passionate about this and we have so much that we want to say. And so time management is not always going to be, I set aside 30 minutes for this and I can get this done in 30 minutes. You're going to find often that a topic or a case or a meeting or reorganizing the pharmacy takes way longer than you thought. And that's okay. Time management doesn't mean that every task you set out is going to be exactly as you set it out. But it does mean understanding, generally what things could take and reacting when things take longer than they should. And is it something that you can pause and restart later? Or is it something that's a very high priority and you have to do right now? And time management is so important too, as we talk about training. There's been a running theme, especially as we've gone into COVID America and curbside medicine, on how do we get training as part of our day when we can barely take lunch? But it's one of those things that's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And the less we train people, the more that they are dependent on us, and the more time in the long run we are spending with them and teaching them and reteaching them. When if we just took that time up front, set aside time, and really got into it with them, it would pay dividends in the long term. So to piece it all or wrap it all together, again, training isn't coaching. And so we have to be smart about how we break those two apart, and when to use which skill. Communication. Did we say communication?
Yeah. A little bit. Yeah, absolutely. The only other thing, if I could just chime in a second about training and coaching, is another way that really helps you focus these two and keep them in tandem, but a little bit different, is you're going to train the skills. Like Caitlin said at the very beginning, skills and behavior, but you're going to coach the person. That's where your support and your guidance comes in. And that's why they're so impactful when they're done together.
Such a good point, Liz. And understanding the difference is so important. And then understanding the person. So when you are coaching, or even when you're training, you have to communicate that skill. And this is another, I think we said we've got a whole other hour on this, but try to boil that down. You've got, again, communicate, communicate, communicate. And when you're in doubt, communicate again. So frequent. Don't let it sit in your head. Be respectful in your communication. Mind your tone of voice. Mind your facial expression. We are all people. We have all had bad days, and we just have to treat each other, with respect. You never know what's going on at home.
It's true.
Be clear. Be concise. So try not to use superfluous words.
Oh, good one. I like that one. Yeah.
Which can, make people feel uncomfortable if it's not one that they know. Be constructive. Use your communication to get something out of the conversation. And again, continuous. Never stop communicating. Lead by example. This one is so important to me. Lead by example, lead with compassion, lead with your heart. But you as a leader, as a part of a team, you are able to change the tone and the culture by your actions. And so be that person that you want to be. Be the change you want to see in the world.
Yes.
Andy. Get organized to be efficient. I love efficiency. I talk Alyssa's ear off on it all the time, but
she herds my cats, so it works out very well.
But I loved yesterday. Katie opened hers up with time is our most precious resource, and that is so true. It is a finite commodity, and there's so many things we want to do with our time. We want to be learning. We want to spend time with our families. We want to spend time with our pets. We want to spend time in the back with a glass of wine. And so the more we can be efficient in our tasks and not spend extra time doing things,
My dog, sorry.
the more we'll have time to do the things that we want to do. And in that respect, manage your time. If that means writing out a calendar for you, then do that. If that means telling your teammates, I'm taking a break right now, don't come bother me, then do that. If that means putting do not disturb on your phone and not looking at it for hours, do that. And demand it of others and yourself, because it is important. It is key to our well-being.
Right. And this is going to come into as well as we're aware that this is not easy to, you can't say to your boss, I demand a break. That won't go over well. That's not what we're saying. But it's how we're going to start to change the culture of the veterinary setting and the industry as a whole, right? Is that you need to feel comfortable saying, this is what I need, why I need it. And everybody needs the same thing. And the last point there is we're not going to apologize for it. We have a sorry jar in our house where we unnecessarily apologize. You put a quarter in. It's fuller than I'd like, but we haven't put stuff in for a while. So there's progress. And that's really what this is all about, right, Caitlin? It's progress. It's a process, and it's dynamic and it's cyclical, and it's got to change and evolve because that's what we as humans do. So there you have it, folks. That is EV training. So what we'd love for you to do is stay connected with us. This is our website, our email. hello@empvet.team is the general, but you know our first names. I think you can figure out what our direct emails are, and I promise you we will get back to you if you reach out. Follow us on social. We're on all platforms, and absolutely in the teams that we have set up for I4, they're going to stay open. So you have a safe place. Yes, it's another platform, but it's not one that is public. It's reserved for those of us that are just in part of I4 intervention to be a part of that positive impact for change. We are so excited and honored that you have chosen to spend your time with us this week, and your patience and flexibility. And we are so excited to move onwards in this intervention with you together. Thanks again. Have a great rest of your week. We'll see you tomorrow for Wholeness Wednesday.
Thanks, EV team.